Up next, I would like to welcome Ray Kurzweil. Ray is a world-class inventor, futurist, thinker with 35-year track record of accurate predictions. He's been a leading developer in artificial intelligence for 61 years, longer than any other living person. He was the principal inventor of the first CCD flatbed scanner, omni-front optical character recognition, print-to-speech reading machine for the blind, text-to-speech synthesizer, and a music synthesizer capable of recreating a grand piano. Ray has received numerous awards, including Grammys for Outstanding Achievement in Music Technology and the National Medal of Technology. His new book, The Singularity is Nearer, was released earlier this year and debuted at number 4 on the New York Times bestseller list. He is also a principal researcher and AI visionary at Google. Please welcome Ray and Jeremy Legg.
Great to be with you.
Ray, these are always very humbling, you know, when they give your bio and then they're like, and Jeremy Legg. No.
Well, I seem a lot bigger than you are.
Well, that's true. You're gigantic in this room, but thank you for carving out time to be with us all. And to both, given that this is a security conference, both Ray and I are fully authenticated and encrypted. So don't fear about the status of this conversation. Just a show of hands in the audience, how many folks have read Ray's books or articles? And so, yeah, pretty good number of you. Okay, so you've got, Ray, just for your benefit, a probably above average informed audience, which ought to make this a great discussion.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, for those
to be here at the AT&T Secure Communications Conference in Dallas and elsewhere.
Yeah, you're a broadcast all over. So maybe we just start off for those that didn't raise their hand in the room, and you know, you've written several different books now on the Singularity, and you know, I read yours over the weekend, the most recent one, and it seems as though many of your predictions are beginning to come true. So maybe just kind of walk folks through the Singularity, what it means, and some of the events that have happened along the way, which are kind of proving out that you're on the right track.
Yeah, well, in 1999, I gave a prediction that we would meet AGI, Automatic General Intelligence, as well as have an event that people would be very excited about in AI around now. And people thought that was ridiculous. In fact, a lot of the people that people listen to now came to a conference that Stanford held, and they said that would take 100 years. And I was the only person that said it would take 30 years by 2029. And in fact, I'm still saying 2029, but people are thinking that's conservative. A lot of people are saying it's going to happen next year, the year after, and so on. If we show the chart, the computation chart that I gave you, that will show one of the key things that enables me to make predictions.
Yeah, if we
and I
can
make
pull that
predictions
up.
in order to be an inventor, so I could start things a little bit before they're feasible. Do we have that up now?
Yeah, do we have that slide up, or is that in the back there somewhere? I think we're sending media productions into a frenzy here looking for the slide, but keep going.
But this is a exponential chart. As you go up the chart, each level is 10 times greater than the level below it. It starts in 1939, was the first computer that we've ever created.
It's up now, Ray.
That's not the chart. Okay, there it is.
There we go.
So in 1939, we had the first computer made by a German. It's actually shown to Hitler. Hitler showed very little interest in it. It generated 0.000007 calculations per second per constant dollar. If you go up to the right-hand corner, 2023, actually 2024, we have the NVIDIA B2200 chip, does 500 billion calculations per second per dollar. That's a 75 quadrillion-fold increase for the same price. So for the same price, you get 75 quadrillion-fold increase in capability, and that has to do with hardware. There's a whole other thing with software, which is also equally fold. We're actually doubling computation about every 9 months. And this is really a straight line, meaning exponential growth, and you don't see any delay when it went from electromechanical relays, which is what we started with, to vacuum tubes, to transistors, to integrated circuits, to things past integrated circuits, including three-dimensional integrated circuits. It's just a straight line. It's really pretty remarkable that the increase exponentially was the same back 85 years ago as it is today. But you add all that up, it's a 75 quadrillion-fold increase in 85 years.
Well, maybe with that, let's build on this and talk a little bit about quantum. And as qubits become more and more stable, and you can have more and more qubits, does this graph just keep going up, or does it literally just go literally straight up? When you begin to think about computational power.
Well, I'm not enthusiastic in computing. I mean, all the fantastic things that I talk about in my book are done with classical computing. Quantum computing really hasn't done anything yet, but we're going to keep going. And we're at the point where about 1 trillion calculations per second per dollar is about the level we need to do AGI, automatic general intelligence. So these computers will be as intelligent as humans are in every different field, and they're getting close to that already. But it's actually classical computing, not quantum computing.
So maybe talk a little bit about what this means, and so we'll take it out of telecommunications and put it in healthcare for a second. What does this mean to health research?
Well, healthcare is very interesting. For example, Moderna tried to determine a COVID vaccine, and there was a great deal of urgency in this. There was actually billions of molecular sequences that could create COVID vaccine, and we didn't know which one was which. We actually tried them all with biological simulation. So we had the computer simulate all several billion, and we did that in 2 days. So the Moderna vaccine was actually created in 2 days. Then it took us 10 months to test it on humans. Eventually that'll be done by computer as well. But we're going to be able to do things in a way that's much more expeditious than has been done before. Previously, we tried to find somebody who had some experience with the thing that you're trying to cure, and we would actually test it out on humans. That would take months or years, and we would then we would find out certain things that we had to redo. Typically, a new medication takes about 10 years, costs several $1 billion. We can now actually do it in a matter of days by actually simulating biology in the computer using AI. So, and we're seeing that come to fruition already.
So we talked a little bit about some of the good uses. We've got a cyber audience here. Let's talk about some of the malicious uses of this. What does this technology mean relative to cybersecurity? And sort of as you forecast out how people are going to use this and how the good guys and the bad guys are going to be battling each other, how do you think about that?
Well, we're counting on all of you, anybody involved with secure connections, For example, we're going to be able to put things in our brain that will communicate outside, and will go to a nearby cloud. I mean, right now, we can amplify our intelligence using this. So I can actually find out anything that human beings have ever found, but it takes me like a minute or two to actually access this. It sounds very convenient. It'd be good if it actually was in our mind. If things would occur to us as quickly as our thoughts occur to us, that will happen in the 2030s. But it's very important that we keep that confidential. So secure connections is very important. But I think we actually know a lot about how to do that. We're able to keep the things quiet. But that's a very important issue. So what you're doing is actually very key to the future of being able to keep these things safe.
Well, let's build on that a little bit. You mentioned the 2030. Hopefully, people caught what he just said, right? So I'm guessing you're jumping into nanobots and its relationship to human beings and how that ultimately can. This is a overly simplistic term, but sort of turn us all into integrated circuits in some way. You said in the 2030s. That's not very far away. That's you're talking maximum 15 years. Near term 6 years.
I'm saying we'll have AGI, a computer that can do anything that a human can do, better than any human being. So, I mean, I can play Go, but I don't play a very good game of it. But computers can play Go better than any human, and they'll be able to do everything that humans can do, only better. But people look at this as us versus the computer, whether the computer is smarter than us, but actually we're going to bring it into ourselves. We're going to become smarter. So all the capability that a computer have, we're going to have. Now, we already have a lot of capability just using this thing. This didn't exist 10 years ago. And within, maybe a minute or so, I can actually access any intelligence that human beings have. But we'll be able to do this instantly in the 2030s.
So, are we ready for this? Talk about the human side.
I think we're more than ready. In fact, people are very concerned with the computer can do things that we can't do. So we'd like to bring the capability of the computer into our own brain so that we can do it ourselves. So I think we're more than ready to be able to handle this. But you're right, secure connections is very critical to it. But I think we have a lot of data on how to maintain secure connections.
And do you think the next iterations of this, so when you're really talking about the singularity, which if memory serves was around 2045, which still, given my vintage, doesn't feel all that far away, you're talking...
But 2045 is a little bit different than AGI. AGI is basically equivalent to one human, a very good human that knows everything, but it's basically one human. We'll be able to multiply our intelligence about 1 million-fold by 2045, and that's what we call the singularity. It's not just becoming capable of being one human, but really have a knowledge of basically 1 million humans by 2045. And that's so difficult that we borrow this metaphor from physics and call it a singularity.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about the components of that? So you talked about compute. Can you go into the other components of the singularity and talk a little bit about how those are evolving?
Well, one thing is having the compute, but the other thing is having the knowledge that human beings have. And we're on a great knowledge quest, creating every new version of, let's say, a large language model requires basically knowing everything that human beings can know. So we'll have richer and broader data sets that we can create the future versions of AI. And we can see that already. And I think actually the biggest thing is actually collecting this data so that we know all the data that human beings can know. And that's well underway. We'll have that by 2030. But we're already connecting our brains to computers. This is done now for people that can't communicate. But by 2030, it'll be easy enough to do that we'll all be doing it. And by the 2030s, we'll be basically expanding our intelligence right within our brain, connecting it to the nearest cloud. Nanobots will connect our brains to the cloud. It'll be non-invasively through the capillaries, won't require any surgery, and will fully merge with AI. We'll expand our intelligence 1 million-fold by 2045.
It's hard to bend people's minds given everything that's going on in the world, but hopefully mine just bent a little bit. So hopefully this is registering with you all. So there's a chapter in your book that talks about that life is getting exponentially better. And when you turn on the news or you chat with friends over cocktails, it does not seem that way these days. Expand a little bit about why you think that's true. Because I think in this day and age, everyone could use some good news and probably some retrospect about how that's happening.
Well, news is basically negative news. Something happens that goes wrong, and we report on that. And if you listen to the news, you're listening to bad news. And good news happens very smoothly. For example, if you show the U.S. personal income chart, this is in constant dollars. And from 100 years ago to today, we've multiplied the basic income that an average person has tenfold. So we had absolutely no government programs. Everybody was quite poor 100 years ago, and this is actually continuing. I mean, you can get a computer that's, I mean, the computer in this is millions of times greater than the computer I used as a student. And that costs, in today's dollars, something like $30 million. This costs a few $100s. And yet it's millions of times greater in terms of capability. So, and as more and more of our economy becomes computerized, we're gaining the benefit of that. I'll give you a sample of what people think. We did a survey, and 26 countries were polled, 31,000 people, and they were asked, has extreme poverty gotten better or worse over the last 20 years? 2/3 thought it's gotten worse. But actually, the poverty had decreased by 50%, and only 2% guessed that. So people thought things had gotten worse, but in fact, they had gotten better. And that's true of everything that we care about. Child poverty, violence, literacy, education rates, civilization progressions via tightly interconnected feedback loops where we actually get better. I mean, things were very, very poor 100 years ago, but that was the reality then. And it gets better every day. We don't report on that.
Yeah, well, thank you, because that's very good perspective. You know, for a lot of people in this room, it's hard to think innovatively because your day job interferes. And the threat of the day, the threat of the month happens. You know, you've been an innovator your whole life. So what lessons have you learned about thinking innovatively that you could share with all of us?
Well, the way I go about inventing is to think about the future and actually think about a speech that I would give once I've solved the problem, even though the problem isn't solved. But I think about this at the beginning. And what would I have to say had happened in order for this invention to be prevalent? And I actually make up this speech and actually then work backwards as to what do we need to do to create this invention. But the other thing is I look at that graph. For example, I did omniphonic character recognition in the 70s, and I did speech recognition in the 80s. The reason for that is speech recognition requires a lot more computation, and I couldn't have done it in the 70s. So had I decided to start with speech recognition, I wouldn't have succeeded. So you have to be able to anticipate where technology will go. So my futurism is actually based on my career as an inventor. I didn't go into futurism just on its own. I tried to anticipate what will be feasible a little bit beyond where we are today. And that's the reason for the futurism.
That's very helpful. So let me, you talked about 2045, so I want to jump out a little bit further. And what's the wildest thing you haven't shared with anybody yet? So what is 2055 or 65 or 75 going to look like versus as far out as you've predicted? We won't hold you to it.
That's why we call it a singularity. The singularity in physics is something where the gravity is so great that nothing can come out. And so we actually can't see inside a black hole. And we call this a black hole of history. And that if our intelligence is 1,000,000 times greater than it is today, we can't imagine what that would be like. So, I mean, I can imagine what the next few years will be like. And I've written about that in the book. But what 2045 will be, that's why we call it a singularity, because it's hard to anticipate. But we will expand our consciousness beyond our imagination. We'll be smarter, funnier, more compassionate, more creative than we are today, many times so.
Well, we do want to open this up to questions. I have some more, but if there are questions in the room or questions online, John Dietz is definitely smartier. There's no doubt about that. But we want to take a couple in the room. Do we have mics in the room that we can?
We do have mics.
You're gonna get some live questions from here in the room. We'll start right there, and then we'll move up there.
While we're waiting, let me ask one. So how will this apply to cybersecurity? How do you see the integrations between what's coming in the future and cyber and how we're going to protect ourselves?
Well, I mean, every year provides new problems. The fact that we're not overwhelmed with problems, I think it's the fact that the people in this room are doing a good job. For example, in the election we just had, you could have somebody, and it looks like them, it looks like they're talking, and they're giving something that they never said, but it looks like they're saying it. Fake personalities. And you got somebody you know, and they might say something that's damaging to themselves, for example. We did have that, but we actually were able to anticipate it quickly enough. I mean, I don't think that played a major role in the election, even though it could have. And I think that secure connections help with that. We're able to tell, even if somebody looks like they're saying it, but they're not really saying it, we can actually tell that in advance. most of the time. But the problems are going to get more difficult as we go forward. But I think the benefits outweigh the problems.
So why don't we go here, just give your name and your company, just so Ray's got some context.
Yeah, I'm David DeSalle. I work for DXC Technologies. Question around neurochip technology, what you guys are talking about. So is your prediction as this gets developed and inserted into folks as the adoption takes off, what industries thrive and what industries go away? And then second question is, does you expect life expectancy to get longer with this technology?
Yeah, two interesting questions. First of all, everybody has access to these new chips. It used to be you have to be a wealthy companies in order to afford these new chips. But now you can go to a cloud and access the new chips very inexpensively. So a farmer in Africa can access these new chips and plan how to plant his crop, for example, and it's very inexpensive. So we're basically all benefiting from these new chips, and it keeps coming out. I mean, we have now a 500 billion chip. There's already reports of things that are 2 or 3 times greater than that. That's what we expect. As for life expectancy, yes. There are already things that are being marketed that are being tested and look very promising, that, for example, that are cures for cancer, cures for Alzheimer's, and so on. And we're able to test these out with simulating biology inside the computer. So we can do what used to take years in a matter of days. So what I expect by 2032, we'll develop what I call longevity escape velocity. So this means right now, as you go forward a year, using up a year of your longevity, so you're younger. However, we have scientific research that's coming up with cures and new treatments for diseases. So right now you're getting back around 4 months. So you use up a year, but you're getting back 4 months from scientific research. But the scientific research is expanding exponentially. So by 2032, you'll get back not 4 months, you'll get back a full year. So you use up a year, but you'll get back a year, and you basically stay in the same place. Past 2032, you'll actually get back more than a year. So you go backwards in terms of time. So things that used to kill us, particularly aging, won't be as dangerous. And even accidents, right now, for example, self-driving cars are much safer than cars driven by humans. And as within 10 years, I think most people will be driving self-driving cars, and the 40,000 people who die each year from car accidents won't be a problem anymore. So yes, we will actually live much longer than we are today, but we'll also be able, electricity will be much cheaper, and
well, I think,
for example, we're achieving 2 million-fold increase in use since 1975 when we first started solar energy. Everything is getting cheaper and less expensive, so we'll be able to have much more people living than lived before. This is an exponential chart that shows electricity generation.
Well, I think people in cybersecurity would argue that each year of their life costs them 2 years of longevity. So we may need to accelerate the medical curve there. I know there was a question up here in the upper left there. Oh, yes, same question. Okay. Got another one over here? Yeah, please go ahead.
Hi, how you doing? My name is Emilio Munoz. I'm a student at SMU. First off, your whole talk has been really amazing, like super interesting. I'm sure everybody else probably agrees. For neurochips, you mentioned that in the year, like around the year 2045, these chips will make us about 1 million times smarter. Given that we've been talking about cybersecurity, could it backfire potentially and be hacked to make us dumber?
Well, that's if the people in this audience don't succeed. I'm confident you will succeed, though. We've been keeping up with it. A lot of crime is generated by misuse of secure connections. And the ability to do this becomes more capable each year, so we have to do a better job. We'll be engineered with much higher security standards than consumer electronics. But think about things that we've had. We've had, for example, nuclear plants. We have them all over the world. No nuclear plant has been hacked into meltdown. Maybe 1 or 2 planes have crashed, but generally planes don't crash. So we're able to keep things that need to be safe, pretty safe. Not totally, but I think you're doing a very, very good job. And that's going to be key, particularly as our own thoughts are generated to the cloud. But use clouds today. You can use the cloud with this, and generally people are not able to secure it. You actually have more security today than you used to have before. When I was growing up, if you had a phone, you picked up the phone, other people were on the phone. You didn't carry it with you, and other people were using the phone, you didn't know who was on it. You have much more security today than you did 50 years ago.
Right, any additional questions here in the room?
Right here.
That one? Yeah, please, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Decca. I work for AT&T. What are 2 or 3 things that we can do to prepare for all the changes that are coming in such a way that we thrive rather than feel stressed out by all of it?
Yeah. Another way of answering that question is what should we be teaching our children? I mean, education really hasn't expanded very much in the last 10 years or even the last 100 years. And it used to be people tried to learn things that were good for them earning money and so on. Coding is actually was considered a very good thing. But Google advised that 25% of its code is actually created by computer. That's likely to go up, not down. That's true of every other company. So I think what we should teach our children, and it's also true of ourselves as we become adults, is pursue passions despite skeptics. There will be exponential opportunities that we never imagined before. The lights became a movement 200 years ago because people were making cotton dresses, and we had things like the cotton jenny that could do the same thing that humans could do, and people thought, well, there goes employment. But think of the jobs that people do today. 80% of the people 200 years ago were working in creating agriculture. Today, that's 2%, and yet we have a higher percentage of people that are employment. So you could imagine 200 years ago that you'd be a social media commentator, but no one knew what social media was 200 years ago, or even 50 years ago.
Well, it was the party line operator on your phone.
Yeah. So try to find things that turn you on, and there'll be new ways of doing it. I was looking through toys for my grandchildren, and things you can do with your toys are things that are pretty remarkable that you couldn't do at all 10 years ago. So think about what would really turn you on, and pursue your own passions regardless of any skeptics around.
It's good advice. I think there's one question over here, and then we'll jump online. I know there was one over here somewhere. Oh, did I miss? Okay. Yep.
Don Heatley from AT&T. Could you talk a little bit about the topic in your book of that brain-computer interfaces will allow almost replicants and extensions of ourselves? I think you call it a U2, like YOU numeral 2, and what that means for human beings in the future.
Well, there's ways in which we can do that today. I actually collected everything my father had written. He died when I was 22, so over 50 years ago. And I created a chatbot with my father, so you could ask any question, and it would look through everything he had written and find the best answer and give you that. And it actually felt a lot like talking to him. I would ask a question, and it would give me an answer based on what he had written. Once we're actually able to capture our thoughts and transmit them to a local cloud, you not only have everything you've written, but everything you've thought. And you really could recreate somebody that's very much like you. And I've talked to people about this who don't really understand the technology, but they've missed somebody and they really like to be able to talk to them again. And my daughter, who actually never met my father, has had conversations with my father, very much like talking to him, even though she's never met him because he died shortly before she was born. So we can have more and more information that we can recreate people who are, for example, dead, and we can actually bring them back and they can actually communicate the way they are today.
Yeah, so we've got a couple questions in chat kind of
Should
similar
only
to
be
that.
one Rich Bache, though.
There's only one. But what if there were, do you see there being two Jeremy Leggs where one is sitting on a beach sipping a Mai Tai and his fake one is sitting in an office making business decisions? Is that something that's
Well, I know which one I'd rather be.
coming down the pipe?
But no,
Well, I talk a lot about consciousness in the book. We actually have two halves of our brain, and they think very much the same thing. But in some people, one of them is dead and only one of them is alive, and they act normally, or fairly normally. So which one is really you? It's really hard to say. But you can really do several things at once, and we'll be able to capture what you're doing. So a consciousness extender that's computer-based will be feasible, and we can already begin to do that.
Great.
Want to jump another online question?
Yeah, so back to kind of talking about your electricity examples you were getting. As consumption grows exponentially and generation grows exponentially, do you continue to see generation outpace consumption, even with the cost of AI, the cost of compute, and those types of things?
I mean, I've got 50 different graphs in the book that's showing that we're becoming richer in every different way in which we can measure human performance. And you go back a few hundred years, most people were enslaved in one way or another. They had very little money, but that was reality. And we've overcome much of that, but we still have more to overcome. And the growth of computers, the fact that we can get, actually, it's 3 or 4 times as much computers for the same price a year later, and you keep doing that year after year after year, and more of our economy is governed by computers, we're becoming richer in everything we care about. So providing for basic needs will be relatively easy. We'll have abundance in everything that we care about. Imagine our ancestors in a supermarket today. They'd be amazed at what's feasible. Right. And that's only our ancestors from a few hundred years ago, relatively recently.
I think I have time for one more.
Absolutely. I don't think we have any more in the room, right? Okay, I've got one more online. So a question about Neuralink and what Elon is doing. Has that lived up to where you think we're going? Is he kind of driving that out, or is that the next step?
Were you able to hear that question, Ray?
No, I couldn't hear that.
Yeah,
let me hear it again.
The question was around Elon Musk and Neuralink, and whether that is a first step towards what you're talking about.
Neuralink is a first step in being able to communicate directly from our brain to electronics, which could go to the cloud or whatever. It's not feasible to do what I'm saying in 2045 or even 2030 because it's not fast enough. It's good enough for a person who can't communicate. For example, there's certain people that can't move their arms, can't move their lips, they can't communicate, they can't touch a computer, so we can actually capture their brain waves and actually have them control a computer about as well as you can control a computer. So I think it's a tremendous benefit, but we actually need to be faster in order to do what I'm saying so that we can actually have a large language model inside our brain, and anything you think about, you'd instantly be able to realize inside your brain. It just needs a faster speed, but everything gets faster. So we'll certainly have that by 2030.
Well, Ray, thank you so much for joining us today. If we give Ray a round of applause, that'd be great.
Thank you very much.
And Ray, thank you for joining us, and look forward to working with you again.
Yeah, likewise.
All right, take care.
Be great. Thanks. Take care.
And thank you all for coming to Secure Connections today. Hopefully you found the sessions worthwhile and invigorating. This has been an event that the company's held for a number of years. Rich's addition to it, at least I feel like, has boosted up the adrenaline component as well as the content of the presentations. So I hope you all get a chance both to meet with the AT&T team here, meet with each other, share and download stories, anecdotes, interesting facts. We are all in this cyber boat together. There's no one solution to this problem. And so I encourage us all to work as closely together as we can to fight the bad guys. Yep. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Mr. Bates, you want to close it out here?
Rich is going to wrap us up.
I'm going to wrap. I'm not going to rap. No rapping. I won't do that to people. All right, as we said, thank you all. Hope this was worth your time. We appreciate everyone's insights. We try to go topics to stretch your mind, give you some tactical approach to things. Appreciate all the sponsorship and the help. And remember your opportunity to potentially get CPEs for this. And for those of you here that are local, please join us in the reception following this event. And we'll see you all next year. Thank you.